Well, welcome to the Node.js package maintenance team meeting for August 3rd, 2023. We'll follow our standard agenda of going through the issues that were tagged. And that issue was number 571 in the repo. Before we get started, though, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to share?
Nope.
No. Okay, here I will paste the minutes into the chat so people can add themselves to the attendee list. Do that myself before I forget. Okay, so the first thing on the list is impactful status board. So I know, Darcy, you're hitting that up.
Yeah, I haven't had any time in the last week or two to work on this yet, but yeah, I also haven't seen if there's been any comments on this.
I looked, there's none so far on that.
Yeah, so I'm just gonna take it and probably run with it when I get some time here. Hopefully, the goal is to buy Spain. So in 2 months, roughly 2 months from now, have a like significant update. Hopefully, like have the something to demo and have a project, the project like going. So there was a bunch of questions I had last time as well. We discussed, I think, in the last call, you know, what things we might want to track that aren't already in at least the reference project, which is npm status board. And I think we pulled up a couple, but I feel free to let me know if anybody on this call, Roy or Rick or Michael, if you've thought of any more about this, about specific metrics you'd want to track or want to highlight for projects. Just because I'll add them to the set of initial columns, and I'll try to extract that as I do the development.
Yeah, I think I put them in the minutes for last meeting. Some of did we have that? Let me take a look.
I think I was in real time adding them. So if they're not on,
yeah, or you were adding them. That's kind of what I was thinking. Like I thought we'd captured them somewhere. So
yeah, they should be in the issue itself. So the initial proposed columns is what I'm calling it. And then yeah, the other, I guess, outstanding questions, and maybe we can just solidify on the call because we have some time, is just the scope of packages. Right now I do have there's like an existing set of like 1,000 top 1,000 packages. I'm not sure if that's too much, too little, or do we want to change the scope to just OpenJS Foundation projects or something like that. I'm willing to have it be a smaller set, but I don't think it's as helpful because this group is, I think, aimed at the wider ecosystem, right? So we want to like catch things, you know, maintenance problems potentially in the ecosystem before maybe even the community is aware of it, right? Like that's kind of like my thought is if we have a wider net and we're actually tracking more of the ecosystem in this project board, like it might be helpful, right? So like we can start with maybe 1,000. I'm not sure if somebody has a like better
I
criteria.
agree with the broader net side of things, right? Like really it's like info that might help us figure out as a team here what makes sense to do or not do. And so yeah, having the wider scope is probably is better than just looking at the OpenJS ones, because in theory they're a little better off or than some of the other ones might be anyway, right?
Exactly. Like they already have governance and probably like structures in place for long-term maintainability, whereas like we want to capture problems in the ecosystem where maybe a maintainer has dropped off for whatever reason, and like you might be starting to see that in the data itself, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rick.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, I don't know, like in the goal, like in terms of the people seeing this 1,000, I don't know if that's going to be too much for some people's eyes. Like that's the question, the ultimate question. Like I don't think so, but then again, I can see other people being like, oh, that's a lot of packages to look, like kind of scroll, like look through and be like, oh, you know, I really don't care about XYZ down here. So I'm cool with it, to be perfectly honest. That'll give us a pretty broad spectrum of like what could crop up, like you're saying, in the ecosystem.
Right. So yeah, I agree. Like 1,000's a lot, maybe 100, but I think just if we do the larger set and then trim it down, that's maybe an easier way to say, what are we cutting
Maybe
off, right?
maybe split it and go 500. Like,
That's not bad. Like the other thing that's important to be like, or we should be mindful of is the larger it is, the harder it is to crunch through a GitHub action. So this is like, just to give you a sense of like how this was implemented for NPM, like we had 100 projects, roughly 100 projects that we were tracking. And I remember it timing out like crazy
Yeah,
because we were hitting that upper limit of like the actions compute, like for free runners, I think is roughly 6 minutes. So like if you hit that, I think what was happening even, and Luke from the NPM team can probably tell you how, because he updated that action to be a bit more resilient, to be a bit more like it has, I think now baked into it some retry logic. So it will take like a partial run as still like a source of truth. Whereas like, I think we had some problems initially when we set this up where we were constantly hitting like timeouts and stuff in the infrastructure. Because again, we want this to be like minimal like overhead to maintain. Like I don't want this to be somebody has to host some sort of infrastructure somewhere. If we can just use free compute on GitHub and have this all contained in the repo itself, then I think that it's gonna get maintained long term. You know, everybody here like can touch it, and everybody that has access to PKG.js as a maintainer will be able to contribute. So yeah, like I'm kind of with you, maybe even doing 500 but I maybe there's like an initial run that I can do and see how long it takes with 1,000. I'm also wondering if there's some way that we could even slice that 1,000. So the way that it's listed today is by, I think, downloads. So that may not be as important to us, maybe, because we might actually care more about like or stars, or because that is downloads and stars. They're interesting indicators of like importance, but I think what also is like a key data point is actually dependence. So the number of like inward, you know, edges, right? How many people actually rely on you? Like that to me says something more about your impact in the ecosystem, that if you know, become to rot, or, you know, like there's issues with maintenance, then that project would have a significant burden on the wider ecosystem if it has more dependence. Just because it's popular or got like a lot of stars or even gets a lot of downloads doesn't necessarily mean it's as critical to the ecosystem. I think dependence is probably that data point we want to think
could
about.
it be like a combination of those? Just from, I know where a lot of people do a lot of example repos and such, and obviously some of those would get added as a dependent, and then thus that increases that number. And so it's, some of those could just be red herring like items we're chasing when it comes to that. So I'm wondering, maybe we can use a little bit of math on this, just a combination of the various indicators to give us a, you know, a true value of like, these are the repos that are honestly very valid in the ecosystem. These are the ones we really want to track down.
Yep. Yeah, I can try to look into that. I'll do some discovery work on that then. And again, because what we get as output from this will be a static list, because I don't feel like it's super necessary to continue to like maybe you can look at it quarterly or yearly or biannually or something, like the list that we're tracking. But it's just really tough to like do that work, I think, on a regular basis, like to grok the entire registry. So yeah.
No, you build one static list and let that be for the most part, because we have that similar issue internally when we're building this. We're building a similar tool set around that.
Yeah, the key is like,
it's interesting. Just poking at a few of those, like, you know, Express, which has tons of downloads, also has tons of dependence. And I looked at a few others, but like Interesting Next, which has fewer downloads than some of the other ones I looked at, has twice the number of dependents. So yes, there's a mix of things there. Those two do sound like a both, it's good to look at both of them to kind of say what would be in the very top.
And we could potentially look at putting a little more weight to some of the other values and others, like Darcy's saying, like dependence being a more heavily weighted item because of if you start to rot, we want to see what the heck's going on with you, and maybe putting like downloads as more of a lesser weighted value, and stars somewhere in between or like that. Like weighting those probably makes a lot more sense.
Yeah, I'm not sure, like dependence, I think will grow over time and won't necessarily like if the package is no longer being used, dependence may still be quite high.
That's the same as
Right.
stars though. People don't go back and unfavorite things, right? Like, so it's kind of like one of those
Yeah.
things where,
Yeah.
right. Whereas
I like this thing. Wait, that's like 15 years old.
yeah, I like this
That's what I
thing.
was saying, but I'm just thinking like downloads, I wouldn't want to unfavor that too much because that's actually like a fresh, that's actual activity, people using it versus like the dependence
then we
could
could-
go up and be high, but nobody
Yeah.
uses it at
I-
all anymore, right?
It's really interesting. So we're
Yeah.
talking about something that I thought about a lot for the last 4 years working on NPM, right? So downloads, not every download is I would say equally weighted, right? There's also downloads as a metric is really interesting because it penalizes, it's like penalizes any package that might be getting consumed by a client or like a ecosystem which may not have good caching strategies in place. So like, PMPM is a good example of a newer client that takes a strategy that, you see less duplication and less fetching because it stores a local a single store, and people often aren't blowing away their cache as often as other clients maybe. So you actually see a lot more downloads from certain clients to certain sets of packages. And what that means is like newer frameworks actually see less downloads than I would say legacy frameworks. So you say, hey, Express still gets a ton of downloads. And it might not actually be that it has more consumers or customers, like those IPs actually might be the exact, that 2 million downloads might be from one person, like it might be from one person, one person's CI, right? So it's hard to track because we don't also have the breakdown of unique consumers, right? It's not by ever like, we don't have that information. But yeah, what I'll do, I think, just because I totally agree that downloads is important, stars or favorites or likes or whatever you want to call it is important too. And I think dependence is important. What I'll do is try to find, and I think it already exists, let's say the top 1,000 or 500 of each one of those. In each one, instead of trying to do any kind of weighting, we'll just do each one of those, deduplicate across those sets, and then just make a static set from those three, right? So if we end up with, let's say we do 500, if there was a unique set across each one of those, we would end up with 1,500. But I bet there's a lot of overlap in those three buckets, let's say, for download, stars, and dependence. I think that there's going to be a lot of overlap across that. So then we'll deduplicate across those three lists. We'll end up with a static list that might be 750. I'm going to guess it's going to be between 500 and 1,000. And so it'll be less than 1,000, which is what I think is going to be a really, I think even, we might have to trim it back to the 500, but what we'll do is basically deduplicate that list. We'll have this list of probably anywhere from 500 to 1,000 packages, and then we can use that hopefully as the initial set. Does that make sense as a strategy?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just
I think
like,
I was just, like we don't want to it's the making sure we get the emphasis correctly or not, right?
yeah, well, in the future, the whole point of the stats board is that you can actually do your own sorting based on all this information. Like we don't actually want to prioritize and say, hey, like this one package is more important than the other. We're not actually saying that at all. All we're trying to do is bubble up a way for you to visualize and find information about, let's say, this set of dependencies. So in the future, it'd be great to make this list as large as the registry, right? Like if we are able to grok the entire registry. I don't think
Right.
that's possible based on you know, unless we're gonna spin up some heavier infrastructure. I think it's yeah, like so this first step I think is good and would be helpful.
Yeah, definitely. We can only so much will be looked at anywhere. I was just doing like a quick sanity check of like, say, Express versus Fastify. And actually
Yeah.
the dependencies favor Express twice as much as the downloads do. Just as a, so anyway, it's just very interesting, like you said. I'm sure you've thought about it a lot. And
Yeah, because what we can do from that though is also maybe once we have that in a list, right? So you see Fastify, you see Express, what you could say is like there's a missing metric there. It's because you know probably that the Fastify project is more up to date. It's got maybe more contributors today than it would
yeah,
historically. So there's maybe some missing information that you would actually want to sort by to see if maybe the project needs help. And that's the information that I think the chaos metrics really focus on, which is, you know, time to issue close. And so what's that date? Is that trending down? Is that trending up? Is it actually taking longer to close issues? And you would see actually that metric would probably indicate that maybe Express, it's starting to take longer to triage or remediate issues compared to, let's say, Fastify likely has a higher churn or higher rate of closure of issues and pull requests. And that shows the activity. You know, you don't want to just look at the activity like it, you want to look at like, what does that indicate? Like, okay, issues were closed, but what is that like over time? And is that getting better and better? So like, you want to look at the trends and yeah. So anyways, with more information, we're going to be able to ask and sort this data set or this set of packages easier. And then that's hopefully going to help us highlight like where, if this group wants to in the future, where we want to spend time helping projects, you know, become more maintainable. I think that's the key of this, you know, this working group.
Yep. Okay, anything more on that one we should talk about before moving on?
No, I'll try to have something to show maybe next time. We're still doing our weekly calls, is that right?
It's every 2 weeks.
Okay, so I'll try to get at least the initial set of packages. That's what I'll say is update here is let's get the static list of packages for now. And to Rick's point, like we could even tack on some if we see that something's not there. It's a static list. Feel free to tack on a few extras. Yeah.
Sounds good. Okay, the next one is create doc on how to support ESM and CommonJS. I took a quick look. I don't think there's any update. I will mention we did a review through the in the next 10 meeting on the results from the survey, the Node.js survey. And you know, one of the things that does stand out there, we did ask specifically like ESM, are you planning to use it, and challenges, and really compatibility and interoperability and supporting both, and like being able to migrate from one to the other is one of the big things that was highlighted. And I think even the discussion, you know, somebody suggested maybe some guidance on how to support both would be great. So I pointed to this, and so just sort of reinforcing that the data we got from the survey, I think, shows the value of having something like this as a well-documented sort of pattern. So then the next one is status update and next steps for PKGS Create. I don't know of any progress or anything to discuss on that one. I don't know if anybody else has anything.
I got not. I've been away for a little bit on that, just because of the summer and kids and all that fun stuff. So now that they're all back at school, I'm maybe hoping we can have some more progress on this on Create PKG. Although it's also going to take Wes because he had a lot of the written code for a lot of the Create PKG stuff. So gonna have to go and see if Wes did anything local that he has never pushed up into a branch or anything like that, and see what we can make progress.
Felt that he pushed most of the stuff, but
okay. Maybe if he shows up to the next the collab space for package meta interoperability, meet like working session, I can
And
ask
just
him or
confirm that.
bug him about that. Yeah, just to confirm about it, since it kind of all ties in together with
Sounds
each other,
good.
the create PKG and the package meta stuff.
Yep, definitely. Okay,
What's
so go ahead.
quick question there? So who are you now the champion for this, Rick, or is it Wes?
It's champion for create PKG or for I
Yeah.
mean, it was Wes's carry. I don't know if I'm the sole champion or if maybe
I
we're a
think
collective
Ethan
still.
is Ethan most recently volunteered to try and move it forward.
Yeah, he was, and then I think he's getting sidetracked, or not sidetracked. He's then his priority probably is more shifting towards the package meta spec stuff. I don't know if how much that'll pertain to the actual package, but I think from the create PKG side, I mean, I'm happy to help champion it now that I've got some extra time, like a little extra time.
If you have cycles, I
work.
think that makes sense, because I think he said that like he was going to focus first on the other side, because that would kind of in the end determine what may or may not be in the tool, right? So
Yep.
but
And
that doesn't
that
mean
makes sense.
there couldn't be some real progress on the tool in parallel, right?
Yep. Totally agree. Because like most of it's like being utilized for like what scaffolding, a lot of it, right? That was the predominant, like Wes was saying, it has a lot of the scaffolding measures in place, and that can still be a thing that's still being worked on, even though it doesn't have the true spec or the spec that's being defined at the collab space level. So but that can just still keep going from separate of the other group.
Yeah, because we basically had it completely like, hey, here's a version. We just now, before we publish it officially, we just want to make sure that the other thing finishes up or something. But anyway, it'd be a good place to be in, to have it to be ready. And then we could see, like, do you make it wait for the outcome of that other thing or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just because like I'm working this space right now in my net new tool, and so it's like I don't want to.
Well, if you want to, I'm happy to work with you on it, Darcy. Like, if you're already in that net space, like I don't want to step over what you're doing either. So if you're already doing stuff, like,
no, I want to use something that's standard, right? I want to use something that's standard. I just want to make sure that's going to get maintained, right? So like, if
I'll help you maintain it. I have no problem helping you maintain.
Okay, let's get to like a 1.0 on this, because it's pretty straightforward, but it needs to be like, I think we need to have a story to say, like, why would I use this over like some existing like npm internals? Because like npm has repackaged JSON, and then the package that actually Roy, who's on this call, wrote package.json, as well as like an internal interface for npm. If we're saying that we want to maintain essentially not competitor to this, because it's going to have some slightly different things, especially the goal is to have formatting and again like a spec for some standard init values. I think I would love to push this, because I wrote the init command the other day for my my package manager. But
we can kind of say that this might be the spiritual successor to Rui's package JSON, so that way Rui doesn't have to continue to maintain package JSON or the.
Well, he's not. Once you leave npm,
yeah, don't worry.
That's right. That's right. I'm so sorry. All that's out of your hands now. It's all on Luke. I'll just say maybe Luke wants a little bit of a sweet relief.
No, they both do. Yeah, Luke and Agar definitely are happy to shed more and more, I think, of the npm internals that don't make sense for that are just like the ecosystem at large benefits from shared maintainership of over. And also there's like, even back when I was still on the team, we agreed that it made sense that this group could kind of start to dictate what the ecosystem needed in terms of like standards for net new capabilities, right? So like something in Node is now, there's a blessed net new field in package JSON. It would require npm updating versus requiring this package to update, which I think is more beneficial. So
yeah, no, I agree, totally agree.
So do you have time to actually work on this, or I might just try to look at what's happening.
I can give it a cycle. I'll be a little bit free tomorrow. I can give it a little cycle, just a little tied up today. But I'm can take a look, and if you want to hop on like a chat or something inside of Slack and
What might be better is like, I might actually just get my hands dirty. And if I
Okay.
see places where I can update and try to get us close to like a 1.0, what I'll ask for is like a peer review, like a pull request review from you if things look good. And then we can just start to move forward on some stuff. Because I would like to consume this is what I'm thinking is like,
I think a lot of people would like to consume this. I have a scaffolding type tool, and I would love to consume this internally at our company, and that will take a lot of that internals off of that hands. To be completely honest.
Then once we have users, then we can say like, hey, like, then we have to make breaking changes. Then we have to be a bit more diligent about the maintenance and things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would also think that we want to write some benchmarks for this.
Yeah. We can write that up in a workflow on the test that can test out those benchmarks out, whatever we decide we want to set it at. That way we can, every time we're doing this, just run it, let it see how it performs.
Yeah, because reading and writing is like, obviously we want to be as performant as possible. So yeah, if we can do that or give some semblance that it's basically there's zero difference between using this package and what npm has, then at least encourages Luke and Gar to maybe move to this as well. Yeah.
Yep, agreed. Or maybe even net positive. Who knows?
Well, the net positive is the not having only 2 people maintain it, but having a whole working group or people.
Oh yeah. No, I meant from a performance standpoint, just getting it to like you're saying, if it can get to that same level, I'm hoping a more positive output where it's like it performs better. So that way, that really encourage. And yeah, like you said, we get more. There's more people wanting to contribute and maintain and add to and such.
Yeah. So what might fall out of this is like another set of packages, because there's probably like the FS read and write calls. You want to get as close to the system as possible, and then you're going to want to do some checks for that, and that you don't want to have to like again, you're going to be competing with some existing libraries, but again, we have to look into this in terms of the performance of it. But you're right, we probably could do a better job than whatever is being done right now. And yes, Roy, package JSON is the one I mentioned, but also because package JSON, if I remember correctly, all it does is extra formatting on top of what read package JSON did. Is that not right? It does also getting and setting, I guess. Are you there, Roy?
Yeah, I'd say, yeah. It kind of allows it to save. I saw they recently even added a fix method to it.
Right, so they're trying to add basically formatting. I think it comes back from an RFC that I think Luke wrote for npm a while, like a year or so ago, for formatting, which is basically exactly what we're discussing here. Like formatting of package JSON, but also like npm init having like specific values that like we want to control, or let's say we want to give a consumer of the package control to decide. Like Yarn or another package manager or any kind of tool could basically initialize this with its own set of like defaults that it wants to prompt users for, I think is the idea.
But then I guess like from what I remember from the origin of this is right, like the idea was like, this is the library to add it to your package JSON the same way the npm CLI would, right? So that we can standardize in having always the same formatting. And
but that's for the npm CLI, right? Like we want something that's broader. So like my hope is with this work that we're talking about and the tools that we're talking about building with create pkg.js, you would like Gar and Luke could basically rip out the internals of package JSON and call out to this. Like, and all they'd be doing is applying the specific formatting that they want, like the ordering of workspaces and dev dependencies, or peer dependencies in the package JSON when it writes and reads that JSON object, because I know that there's specific formatting and ordering that we had, or also, and that might be different from someone else, but also the prompting is going to be different in NPM then.
Right.
So doesn't mean we can't all be using the same tool though under the hood. So
Yep.
yeah. Okay. Let me take some time then. Apologize for, and I'll poke you, Rick.
Sure, sounds good, man.
Okay, that takes us to the end of the agenda. Is there anything else we should chat about this week?
I opened up a issue for this group session for the OpenJS Summit. I'm not sure who's going to be there, but hopefully everybody can be there at least virtually as well. I know that there's usually an opportunity to join virtually.
I think this time around it may be up to us to like get a laptop with Zoom going or something like that, because like the official conferencey ones, well, it didn't work great last year and was very expensive. So I think just doing something like that, but we can do that fairly easily.
Is it possible to switch to, I don't know if Zoom has this, because I don't know how our Zoom setup runs even, because I'm blessed not to have to run these calls like you do, Michael or Roy. But is it possible to just set up a Google Meet or something preemptively? Because I know you can at least name those and have like a persistent location so that we can submit that early and people know where to go. And then when
the Zoom ones are persistent as well. Like you can, like we can just use this link if we wanted to, right? Like it's the same link every single time.
Do you need to be logged in as the owner of the meeting?
We need somebody who has access to stream like we do, like for this meeting. So it would be just like hosting this meeting.
Okay. And you'll be there in person?
I'm going to be there in person. Yeah. So.
Okay. So maybe can we then share the link to this meeting in, I saw there was a section for that in the proposal, and I'm guessing it's probably because of exactly what you just said, Michael, that
you could just take the link that we had here and paste it and say like, you know, our plan is during the session, we're just going to get somebody's computer and start it up with Zoom. Here's the Zoom link. Feel free to join.
Okay, I'll update the issue then. That makes sense. And yeah, hopefully whoever can't make it. I'm not sure, Rick, are you coming out to Spain in September?
No, I won't be able to make it. I'll be here. I'll probably try and join. Let's see. I'm curious what the time difference is. Probably be late in the evening for me, so I'll try and join virtually. 5 or 6 hours. Okay. Yeah, I'll probably just join virtually.
Okay.
Just to collab in. Where did you open that issue at, Darcy? Was that in the in the package maintenance one?
I just shared it in chat. It's in the OpenJS Foundation.
There we go.
Technically, I think this year they're calling the summit the node.js Summit, because that's where I think most of the working group sessions have sort of focused around in the last 4, 5, 6, summits. So
right on.
Yeah, I didn't poke you there. I apologize, but I added Wes and Roy's names as well as Michael's.
Oh, good. So yeah, I'll try and attend the collab summit virtually.
Cool. In terms of agenda, do people want to just read that issue right now quickly? We got 15 minutes, and let me know if there's anything we should or shouldn't be discussing there. Like, look at these as kind of like milestone setting or like talking point times, right? Like, I hope in 2 months we have something better to talk about than the same stuff we talked about 6 months before, right? So
yeah, I think that's a good start, and to drive it based, like we've kind of got those main things we're working on, so that's a good thing to cover. And
nope, looks good to me. I like the the drive there.
I'm gonna
Okay, anything else
add
we
your
should
name.
chat? Sorry, go.
I was just saying I'm gonna add Rick's name so
Yeah.
that I can publicly shame him if he doesn't
Shame.
join virtually at the
Shame.
conference. But they're usually fruitful. So like I'm just hoping again we have updates. So like in these two areas for sure, like with building some tooling around package JSON and then also with like the impactful stats board. Like I think that's a huge opportunity for us to discuss like next steps of how we support those projects once we have a common view that we can point to and be like, hey, I noticed that like X is starting to, have their issue count grow, significantly, but there's only like a single maintainer. And all that information because you were able to like quickly just poke at this tool and figure that out. What can we do about it? I feel like that gets us back to a time when like 2 or 3 years ago when I first joined this group, we were considering how we could support Express and other types of projects. I don't know if we're at the state today because there's only a few of us that continuously show up. But like, I don't know if we're at the state today where we even know where we want to like help the ecosystem with maintaining their projects, right? So.
Yep.
Anyways, I'm excited. Gotta go do some work to make this worthwhile. So.
Got to put the work.
Yep, it'll be interesting. Be looking forward to being there.
Cool.
Okay, well, thanks for everybody's time, and we'll see everybody in GitHub and next time. Thanks.
Cheers.
Bye.
Everybody.